Right, I think we're off and running. Hi, I'm Paul Skelton. I'm a payments hunter and presenter of the payments interviews, which we're now doing live with Elaine Smith. Hi, Elaine.
Hi, Paul. Hi, everyone.
And just before we go, if you'd like to be a guest at some point in the future, if you just scan the QR code over there, which I've finally managed to point to accurately, then you can sign up for that there. But yeah, first of all, thank you again, Elaine, and perhaps you can introduce yourself for everybody.
Yeah, of course. Lovely to meet you. So I'm Elaine Smith. I'm the VP of Partnerships at Volt. So Volt.io, an open banking provider based out of the UK, but we're UK, Europe, Australia, all over the place. So yeah, excited to be here, talk about payments, partnerships, which is my background. And yeah, understand more about what you do, Paul, as well, and learn a little bit off each other.
Right, well, I'll do my best. So a good question that I like to ask people at the beginning, because it's always a different answer. One person wanted to be a chef. There's other people who've done really various different things from what they originally set out to do. What was it you first wanted to be? Because I doubt that you thought, I want to be a payments VP one day.
Yeah, it's not really like the dream when you're a child, is it, to be in payments or partnerships? So interestingly, my degree is in sports therapy. So my background was to be a physiotherapist. That's what I went to university to do. That's what I studied for. That's what I got a degree in. And that's originally why I moved to London about 15, 16 years ago. So yeah, I think I'm sport heavy all my life, interested in football, played football, rugby, triathlons. I do a little bit of everything. So sport is something that always interested me and I kind of fell into that. But yeah, as you can see, that is not where I ended up at all.
Okay, so what was it that made you turn away from physiotherapy? I mean, one of my mates who I'm seeing tomorrow, as I just mentioned to you before we started, he's a physio in the NHS, and he was the hardest working person out of all of our mates. What was it that made you think, you know what, I'm not quite sure this is what I want to do?
Yeah, I think it's a really difficult industry. I mean, all industries are difficult. I moved to London to kind of pursue that, and I was doing a lot of free work, volunteer work. I was working in a clinic in Putney. I was kind of spread quite thin. And for what I wanted to go into, which was more into that club sport, didn't just see the opportunities opening up. And I was like, I can't really afford to live in London. I can't afford to pursue this in London. And I became really good friends with somebody in London who was ex-SAP, ex-Microsoft. He is an incredible person. He was moving to the city for a startup. And he was just like, come work for me. And I was like, oh, yeah, haha, like, you're funny. And he was like, no, like, you're clearly smart. You got a degree. You kind of know the smarts of what I talk about. Let me teach you. And at the time he spoke about the channel, which I thought was a piece of water between England and France. I didn't understand what that meant in partnerships terms or in business terms. And yeah, he took me under his wing. He gave me a 12-month contract. He was the global head of partnerships. I started in like a partners operations role, and I like never looked back. He was incredible. He taught me everything I know. He was master of ceremony at my wedding. I speak to him all the time. He's a mentor. He's a person I go to if I'm like, is this career move right for me? Is this role right for me? I'm looking for a promotion. What do I need to do for that? He's somebody still to this day that I see as like an advocate for my career. But yeah, he is the reason I'm here today. He saw something in me outside of when I was a bit lost and didn't know where I wanted to be as a career. And yeah, set me up for that success. So yeah, very massive U-turn. I remember calling my husband, or now husband, boyfriend at the time, and being like, so I've been offered this job in the city for this guy that I know. And he's like, what? What is happening? And I was like, yeah, but it feels right. And it did. And it is. So sometimes things just happen for the right reason.
That's really interesting. Funnily enough, the MC at our wedding is also someone that I worked with when I started working within payments at Barclaycard. My friend Steph was our MC. So yeah, it's weird how these things happen. But okay, so what was it about partnerships that once you had your foot in the door that you thought, I reckon this is me?
Yeah, do you know, I always say this when I talk about it. I think partnerships is a jack of all trades in some respects, because you get to do a little bit of everything. You get to be part of that sales cycle, both at merchant level and at partner level. You get to negotiate legal agreements. So you get to kind of understand the intricacies of commercials and what we're willing to negotiate on, and be a little master of that part of the business. But you also need a technical understanding around gateways and acquirers and how flows of funds work. You need to understand how finance works from a multi-billing perspective. You need to understand how account management or CSM work, because you've got a two-tier system through partners and merchants. I think partnerships allows you to be cross-functional, but truly cross-functional. Like every single day I can talk to a different person in our business and have a good enough understanding of what they do and how that can work for me. How can I leverage that to be successful? So yeah, for me, I think if I just had a sales role or just had a CSM role, I think it's maybe just focused in one area, where partners is across the board every day, something different. And I think that's the thing that's kept me around. And I've jumped as well. I've moved from more of an ops role to then just a referral role to looking at resellers and distribution, however you work, whether that's in software, which was originally my background before payments, or in payments, whether that's gateways, PSPs, multi-layered. Every conversation is different. Every setup is different. And I think, yeah, it's never a dull day.
Okay, so it sounds like the two main things that are coming out of that are the variety and the fact that you also get to be a little bit involved in everything. Is that fair?
Yeah, definitely. So if you ask my husband, I love to be involved in everything. So yeah. Yeah, I definitely think it's that. And selling the value, I think it's really important to be in a business that also understands that, like understands the value of partnerships and how we can leverage them to be completely successful. So yeah, variety, and yeah, just it's very sociable. I think partnerships, especially in payments, actually, the partner ecosystem is small. Everyone says payments is really small, but then the partner ecosystem in payments is also really small as well. So I think being able to leverage those relationships through many different roles, many different companies is important.
Okay. And in terms of the received wisdom that's around payments, what's something about payments or even partnerships in particular that you think people get wrong, that they think that, you know, that's really important, but you, having done it, would disagree?
People get partnerships wrong and this is payments, and this is software, and this is 15 years of doing this. People misunderstand the kind of sales cycle of partnerships. So everyone thinks it's going to be a massive revenue driver, which it absolutely will be. And everything is just going to happen. I'm going to sign all these partners, and then I'm going to get access to all of their merchants, and then we're going to get all of this revenue. Because Microsoft, which is, you know, one of the biggest players in the world in tech, they have the biggest partner network. I used to be working at DocuSign. I used to work at Box, where we had great Microsoft relationships. I would go to their partner events in Vegas, in DC, where you'd have 100,000 people. They would rent out stadiums. They would rent out the MGM just to have Satya Nadella talking around Microsoft's vision, Microsoft's go-to-market, and 80% of their revenue would come from their partner channel. So it's proven to be super, super successful. But more partners doesn't always mean better, especially when you're starting off. And I think people assume you're going to sign all these partners, you're going to get all these merchants, but the sales cycle in partners is a lot longer. You need to find the right partner. You need to get them onboarded. You need to contract with them. You need to build trust with them. We need to engage with their sales team. That whole sales cycle with partners really could take a year. And only at that point can you then go after their merchant base, which you have to gain trust with. You have to sell to, you have to excite, you have to sell the value of the joint proposition between you and the partnership, and then you've got to get them through onboarding and contracting. So the sales cycle in partners is double to some respect, because you've got to kind of do that sales cycle twice. But that said, once they're there, you have that stickiness. You're part of a bigger ecosystem. It's not just, okay, we've brought Volt, oh, we're going to switch them off. Oh, no, actually, it's through a gateway where I also have an acquirer, a BNPL provider, a local payment method in Poland, and Volt. Well, actually, I've got a series of solutions from this partner, so I'm going to stick around because that partner's more important. So it's kind of a long play through partnerships, but once you're in and you have a fantastic relationship, you're in. So I think it's just that managing the expectations that revenue will come. It will just take a little bit longer, which I think the senior leaders don't always like to hear.
Yeah, I mean, well, it all makes logical sense from what you said, because if the whole point of a good partnership is for it to be sticky, then it stands to reason that at the beginning of your process to try and attract a new partner, you're battling against that with someone else necessarily, aren't you? So you've got to win them away and then make them actually want to see the benefits of it, so that you then become sticky with them, right?
Yeah, definitely. I think as well, it's important to understand what the partner is selling and what the partner is doing. And if it's like I said earlier, sometimes less is more. Sometimes it's important to make sure where the partner is focused, the regions they focus, the merchant size that they focus, the vertical they focused is aligned. Because you could go through all of that and be completely going in opposite directions. Your risk appetite could be different. The merchant like acceptance, 10 mil a year, 20 mil a year, what does that look like? We don't really know that. So we need to make sure that we qualify as early as possible to make sure that it's perfect. So yeah, it's not different in payments. It's the same. It's just the parameters are slightly different dependent on SaaS or payments, I'd say.
Okay. So understanding the intricacies of the long sales cycle, and that it can take twice as long to make it effective, even if once it is effective, it's really effective, would be one of the kind of misunderstandings. Are there any others that you think, oh, that's something that really annoys me?
Everyone thinks, everyone thinks it's just like beers, which it kind of is. It's sociable. I think that's it. But I do think sometimes everyone's like, oh, the partner team are out again. But it is important, like building those relationships through all levels, I think is business critical. Like you want to be top of mind with your partners. Like when they're having a conversation with that merchant, you want them to be like, oh yeah, Volt. Oh yeah, Volt. Like I think it's really important. And sometimes that is coffee. Sometimes that's lunch. Sometimes that's beers. Sometimes that's an event. Sometimes that's a golf day. Like whatever it is, I think it's always important to like be around. But yeah, I think without mentioning my husband again, I think he thinks a lot of my job is partying and drinking and going to events, which is not completely wrong, but there is substance behind that.
I think that's the same in any successful business, right? That if business doesn't feel like business and feels more like hanging around with friends, then you're doing something right.
Yeah. And that, like, you want to work for people you like. You want to buy from people you like. Like, obviously, there's an element in having the right product and the right fit and the right solution. But yeah, you want to have a good time whilst doing it. So it's just trying to make sure that you're aligned on everything and not just BS.
Well, that is important. Okay. And so you mentioned that your indebtedness to the person who brought you in, up to you if you want to name them, it's a nice thing, but I'll leave that to your discretion. But obviously someone did you real good favor in getting you into this industry. What's been the importance of role models to you, and what's the best bit of advice that you've had?
Yeah, Mark is the person. I'm sure he'll be happy for a shout out. So Mark Wayburn is the person. But I think it's consistently throughout my career, I've had different people at different levels. I've been really lucky. I've been surrounded by very great people at every place that I've been in my career. Best advice. I'm not sure. I think most of it's quite cliche, and it kind of comes back to what I said earlier about less is more. in all aspects. I think definitely building out strategy, having a focus, even boundaries like work life, like less is more, being structured around that. I think that's really critical. And then, yeah, surrounding yourself with good people, good energy, good advice. I think that's really important. I wouldn't be where I am today with the good people that I either work with or hire or still keep in contact with. Like yesterday, I was in London. I met a friend in the morning for coffee who I worked with 15 years ago. I met a friend 5 years ago that I worked at Meta at Facebook with, and we spent the afternoon. I went from that and met a friend who I recently hired from Checkout to join me at Vault. Like I'm just surrounded by very incredible people from my career that have become friends. So yeah, very, very grateful. And they all offer advice. My friend who I met for lunch yesterday was giving me advice of how to answer some of the questions for today's conversation. So yeah, I'm gonna have to trademark. She's gonna have to trademark some of the answers, I think.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, a couple of people have commented already, actually. Apologies if I'm pronouncing your name wrong, but either Sarah or Sarah said thanks for bringing payments to us this December day, and that she's proud to work at Paythrough, where they're transforming the driver experience of EV chargers one payment at a time. And Chris Ronald has just said that best partnerships are founded on clear win-win but strong personal relationships. Well said, Elaine. And yeah, Sarah's agreed with that. Partnerships are everything for a successful growth strategy. So you're obviously resonating with people, so that's good. Okay, and I'm interested. What's the worst advice you've ever had without dropping yourself in it with the person that gave it? I'll give you mine if you want.
Yeah, you go.
So I worked for someone who basically, well, he was a terrible person. There's zero chance they'll be watching this, but it wasn't very that I worked at, who said, I like to give my people just enough rope so that they can hang themselves. And I thought it was the most uninspiring thing I'd ever heard in my life. Not I like to empower my people, but I like to just give them enough power so that they stitch themselves up. And I thought that's the most horrific advice I've ever heard any leader give. What's the worst thing that you've been told you thought, yeah, I'm not following
that? So when I was leaving one of my previous companies, I specifically asked for an exit interview with the VP of like the partnerships team. And I mean, I left the company for different reasons, but I just wanted feedback from him. Like, I think 360 feedback is super important. I think it's always good to leave a company on good terms. Like, it's really important to me for my future, my career. You never know who you're going to cross again. So jumped on this call, gave my feedback and said, do you have any feedback for me? And he was like, I have a piece of advice. You're too emotional. And I was like, yeah. So yeah, he told me I need to be less emotional. Which I mean, and I think at the time I was like, oh no, late 20s, maybe early 30s. It didn't bother me at the time as much as it does now. Now it really bothers me. Because I think,
that they had the absolute cheek to say something so stupid.
Yeah, but I think he thought that was good advice. Like we'd had some different things happen at work. I was quite vocal about that. And then I was like, these are all the reasons that I've decided to move on. And yeah, the feedback was being too emotional. And it frustrates me that that's bad advice. I don't think it's bad advice. I think it's very bad advice. I think it's really important to be emotional. Like, I think it's really important to have emotions, to bring those day to day. Like, I think it's really important to work with emotions. Like, if you don't have emotion, you don't give a shit. Like, isn't it good? Isn't it good that we're having these discussions, that I'm actually being kind of vocal about what needs to change and what needs to get better? And I would rather have harder, more difficult emotional chats with my team.
Yeah.
So yeah, he was saying it as a negative, where now, a little bit older, a little bit wiser, I kind of see that as a positive. I like that I'm emotional. I like that I am empathetic. I like that I'm opinionated. I am a serial optimist, and all of those things I think are powerful. So yeah, to be less emotional was not good advice.
I agree. And I personally agree with you vociferously will be my wife when she actually sees this, because like she feels very strongly about this particular issue as well. So
yeah, and I do. It comes to the thing of like, women are emotional, men are strong. Like, I think sometimes that's more divisive to label a woman as emotional, which I think grates on me even more.
yeah.
But yeah, I definitely see it as one of my strengths, as opposed to something that I should try and change or be better. Maybe I just channel it a little bit differently with the growth and with as my kind of career's progressed. Maybe I'm less erratic, or maybe that's probably not a good way to put it. But yeah, maybe I just channel it differently, but definitely I think emotional is a good thing.
Or maybe that person wasn't very emotionally intelligent and envied it in you that you were.
Yeah.
So I would see that as more of an indictment on them rather than any criticism of you. If to digress for a second, you're like this. So at the company I worked, the boss of the unit, who I liked very much, he said, right, as a team building thing, we're going to do this exercise off-site where we're all going to sit in a room together and we're going to give really radical feedback on each other. No holds barred, say whatever you like. So everyone raised their eyebrows, and I said, anything you like. And he said, yeah, we're a team and it's going to really bond us together. And he took me to one side and he went, right, Skelly, you're going to do me first, because I know you'll tell me exactly what you think, and that's what I want, and I can take it. So just give it to me unvarnished. Are you sure? And he went, yeah, like whatever you like, it'll start the ball rolling beautifully. So I said, okay, fine. So this lovely offsite meeting, he set me up to go first, and I said, right, well, first of all, we all really like you. You're very charismatic and fun. And it's a good team to work with. And he was like, yeah. Go on, let's get to the good stuff. And I went, okay. Well, you can be quite bullying sometimes, particularly towards women. And you say things in meetings that are quite disparaging, that you do for a laugh at the time, but make people feel a little bit small. And he went, no, go on, carry on. And then I then flipped through an entire page of other things that I had to say, having been encouraged. And yeah, turns out he didn't really like open feedback quite as much as he thought, and carried it around in a book with him for a year and saying, I know that I'm inappropriate in front of older members of staff, but
so it didn't change his behavior.
It didn't really change.
What was the point of that accent? What was the point of that?
Well, the whole point was that I think he thought that everybody else would iron out their differences, and that anything said about him would be exclusively positive. And yeah, it just turned out that a few people who didn't really like each other just aired it. Some took it very sensitively, and some laughed it off.
I would though. My love language is words of affirmation. So people said, I do think feedback is really critical. I think 360 feedback, I think personal feedback, personal reflection is super critical. But just to stand and have people tell me everything that's wrong with me, that I'd die inside. I would hate that.
Yeah, well, it was misjudged, because some people did like it, some people didn't. Like someone in my team said, I think you're a bit overconfident, and that you can come across as a bit sort of pleased with yourself at times. And I went, yeah, probably fair, actually. Yeah, I need to watch that. Good feedback. And genuinely wasn't bothered. But other people, when some people criticize them, not so good. You've got some nice feedback here from someone you work with. Fatima Ali says, such a good reminder that empathy and emotional intelligence are leadership strengths. This really resonates, and it's something you do exceptionally well at Volt. So that's very nice.
She's a babe.
That'll cost you.
Tell her to say that, by the way, guys. I did not plan little seeds for people to say nice things about me.
She said 75 quid for cash. Is what we yeah. Anyway, so moving back onto you. So we've spoken about this before, but when you hire people, what is it that you look for above all else? What do you think is important? And conversely, what do you think isn't as important?
Yeah, I think a good place to start is the team that you already have internally. So like, where are our team? Where do we sit today? Where are my strengths? Where are my weaknesses? Where are the gaps from a team perspective? Like if I've got 3 really senior people, I probably don't need another senior person. So I like to try and balance of like where we're bringing in strengths, making sure that, there's alignment throughout the team and whoever we're bringing adds value. But then, yeah, humility, a will to learn. I think, like we've discussed at the beginning, my background's not payments. My background's not software. I think when sometimes you see a job spec that's like 5 years experience in payments or 10 years experience at this level, which I agree, there are certain skills that you kind of need to have. But as long as you have a will to learn and you are open to listening and taking things on that we say and working with the team, they're kind of the more soft skills that I'm looking for. Like I previously worked at a company who it was on their job spec, every job spec, that you had to have a degree. So you had to have a degree to even get through the first level of screening. And I have a degree, but it's in like sports physiotherapy. So what does that have to do to selling software? I'm not entirely sure. And I have a friend who is absolutely incredible. She's now a CSM lead. She's fantastic. And they didn't even interview her because she didn't have a degree. She went into the police force out of school instead. So I don't care about degrees or things like that. That's definitely not anything that I really care about. I think experience to some degree, depending on the level I'm hiring for, is important. But yeah, it's more the soft skills that you bring to the team and how we can, benefit from that, from their background, from their humility about their will to learn.
Okay, that's interesting. Hannah Finch has asked, what kind of questions do you ask in interviews to find the right candidates for payment roles? So are there any go-to questions that you particularly like?
I will never really base it on payment roles. I'll ask more around partnership roles.
Mm-hmm.
I like
Makes
practical, practical questions though. So give me an example where you've seen this or where you've explored this or where you've seen an example of this, because you learn on the job, you learn by doing. So if they can give me examples of where they've done something, where they've seen something, where they've learned something, I know that it's like we said earlier, right? It's whether it's software, whether it's e-signature, whether it's content storage, whether it's payments, partnerships is partnerships.
Yeah.
So if you can show me examples in your day-to-day of where you solved a problem or dealt with a difficult partner, the amount of time in partnerships we have difficult issues because a salesperson has stolen a lead from a partner is exhausting. So I will normally ask questions of like, how would you deal with this situation? Because it's a practical question that comes up all the time. And if I know how they can handle it, I also really like in an interview, if someone says, I'm really sorry, I don't know, can I get back to you? I would much rather somebody say, I don't know the answer to that, than like bumble or fumble through a response. And I used to do that. I really, really used to do that. But now I'll just be like, I don't have an answer that I think fully satisfies that. I'd love to have a think about it and come back to you.
Something more considered.
Yeah, because I think, and that's what I would like when I hire someone. If I hire someone and ask them a question, they're like, I don't know, can I get back to you? Or even as a partner, do you know that? No, I don't, but I'll get back to you. Give me to the end of the day. I think just, little things like that is important.
Okay, so to answer your question, Hannah, it sounds like competency-based situational questions that are going to have practical application is what you ask, Elaine. She's also asked the kind of stuff that I ask. To try and answer this as briefly as possible, when I used to be a sales director, and when I did, I would absolutely concur with Elaine. I would like to ask questions that were about things that I knew they would likely be doing, to see how they'd approach situations that I knew were either live problems or were about to become quite live problems. So to see if they've got relevant experience. And I'd ask questions about, what motivated them, to see how that would fit in with the rest of the team. What I do now, it's slightly different, because when I interview people, I'm not actually interviewing them to find out if they can do the job. I'm more interviewing to make sure they fit the recipe of the person who's hiring. So, for example, if Elaine was to say, I want a person that's got X, Y, and Z, it's really important for the balance of the team that they have A, B, and C. And I definitely don't want someone that's done 1, 2, 3. Then my job is to unearth all of that, and to also, outside of what the client wants, find out more about the candidate and what motivates them, what they enjoy doing, and what problems they solve. Because from a candidate perspective, what I do, quite a lot of people fall into the mistake of trying to appeal to everybody. And in doing so, they appeal to nobody. So I always say to people, remember that as well as me and other headhunters, there are lots of prospective employers going through your LinkedIn profile on a daily basis, and they've all got in common the fact that they're trying to solve a problem. And if you don't make it clear that that's the problem that you solve, they'll scan straight past you. So it's better to appeal to somebody really strongly and clearly than to vaguely appeal to hundreds of people who then go, I don't really get what that person does. So hopefully.
And so if somebody sends a CV to you, if it's specifically or a cover letter, when it's tailored specifically to the role, the wording, the values of that business, are those the things that you look for, the terminology that links to that role? Can you tell the difference between a very thoughtful application and I'm sending 100 CVs out really, really quickly just because I need a job? You can tell the difference.
Absolutely. Yeah, it stands out a mile. And people, I think bad recruiters have conditioned people to say in the first interaction, hi, I'm Paul, here's my CV. Whereas I'm much more interested in finding out about, if you were the candidate, Elaine, what is Elaine interested in? And what are her strengths? What's she interested in going to? If she was to leave, what would be her motivations for doing so? And what would appeal to her in the next move? And then once we've had that conversation, if I have a role that's right, then I'll tell you about the role, and then I want to see your CV once you've thought about it. Because although, you don't have to tailor every single CV from scratch for every job, there are absolutely elements that you should tailor, so that if you're in open banking and someone's done open banking and they've done FX, tailor it so that it's much more suited for open banking. You're stressing relevant things for it. Whereas if you just send me something, I am a trustworthy, great operator, brilliant at aligning key stakeholders, you think, yeah, okay, well, so's the guy that does my post. He's excellent, all that stuff, but it's not clear why he's perfect for this job any more than you. So, yeah, hopefully that answered your question.
Yeah, no, it does. I think the other thing, and I think you touched on it as well, is and to extend on Hannah's question earlier, also just to get to know that person. I think when I joined Volt, I joined for the people. So I interviewed with a lot of companies before, because I wasn't unhappy where I was. I was actually very happy. I was very comfortable where I was. It was more like a growth issue that I was kind of couldn't see my next step. So I was working at checkout.com. It's a wonderful company. I know loads of amazing people still there. But it was just, where was my next career move? And it just, sadly, it wasn't at checkout. So I took a lot of time to find the next role. And I was looking at multiple things like company and growth and size, and looked at where I was happiest in previous roles. And it was the people at Volt. So I think that's also really important when interviewing, just to understand, what do these people like? What are their interests? What are their hobbies? What is their family setup? Like, I have chickens. I love talking about my chickens. Let's talk about chickens. So, yeah, I think, people, I think when you interview, everyone's like, oh, they're interviewing with us, they're interviewing with us. No, I'm also interviewing you. Do I want to come to your company? Are you the reason I'm going to join? And there's multiple factors that I look for. And yeah, people is really important. So I think making that person feel as comfortable as possible, and learning more about them and their values and their boundaries and their family setup and their background is just as important as the soft skills and the experience and everything else that is key.
Absolutely. I agree. And there are people that I deal with who are if there isn't anything on someone's CV about outside of work stuff, they want to see it. And I think that's a really positive sign for a candidate, well, and for someone like me to deal with someone that's a bit more of a people person, frankly. It's real truism that people tend to leave bosses, more than they leave jobs. And so it's really important to show what you're like as an individual when you're interviewing as well, because you're going to be spending a lot of time together. It is a two-way process, so it's refreshing you say that. But funnily enough, my friend who's a physio also has chickens. It's obviously a physio thing.
There's a gang of us. We're a gang.
Okay, so I'm cognizant of how much time we've taken up already, but I'm enjoying it. So you've obviously just recently got up to VP. Your partnerships has been the thing for you. What do you want to do in 5 years? What is it that you think would be really interesting for you to do in the future? Or doing this, I love doing what I'm doing, and I want to do this for as long as possible. But is there something that you want to do next that?
So at the start of every year, I always kind of look at goals. So I look at like personal goals, career, and actually I only used to look at like where I am goals. So like goals at Volt and then personal goals. But I think it's also really important to branch out to career goals. I actually listened to a LinkedIn Live or a similar session that was like, oh, you should split this out. And I was like, oh, that's really clever. Mm-hmm. So I think for me, every year I look what that looks like. This year, my goals are more around like awareness for me. I did a podcast, I did something on stage, things that I've never done before. So pushing myself out of the comfort zone. Okay. And then things like personally for me and my family. 5 years is a long way away. I normally only look like a year ahead. Right now, like definitely like my future's at Volt, like you said, and like really recently been promoted, which I'm really grateful for. It's been something I've been working towards for quite a while. And I've had quite a varied career from like Facebook and Checkout and DocSign and here. I don't know where. I think I'd still be in payments. I think from a software background. So like I said, I started my career at startup and then moved to Box and DocSign and Meta. It was software, which is always a nice to have, how I see it for consumers. And then payments, where we sit, is always a must have, like whether that's money movement, whether that's payroll, whether that's embedded finance, whether that's completing a payment, whether it's getting paid, whether it's even like just sending money for you because you bought me a beer last week. Do you know what I mean? I think it's such an integral part of our day to day. I can't see myself leaving this payments ecosystem. Never say never. But yeah, in the next 5 years, I definitely think within payments still. And partnerships. My heart is in partnerships. I can't see me leaving partnerships. I think it's all I've known. It's all I love. And like I said, when I wanted to leave Checkout, they offered me another role in the company, which was really kind of them, but it wasn't in partnerships. I was like, it's my bread and butter. It's what I know. It's what I love. And it's also what I believe in. I think the most successful companies you see in the world have a really strong and incredible ecosystem. And I think if people invest in that and believe in that and see that, you'll get the best out of that. So yeah, definitely a company, hopefully at Volt, that has a really strong partner purpose. And yeah, hopefully I'll be leading it there too, hopefully.
Okay. Well, sounding a little bit like the Emperor from Star Wars, Grant Evans has just said, payments has you for an ever now.
He's meant to be in the pub. He shouldn't be listening to this.
Well, he has put like a little celebratory thing, so that would imply that he might be.
Yeah.
Last one from me. So I spoke to God, I sound really old saying this. I spoke to a young lad earlier this week, really bright guy who's the son of somebody within payments who's looking to move into this world from a bit of a different industry. And what advice would you give for someone looking to break into this world as to how to go about it? I mean, I'll tell you the advice I gave, and you see if there's anything you disagree with or that you'd supplement. I said, you can absolutely do it. You've got the skills and clearly the intelligence, because he's clearly very smart and very entrepreneurial as well. I said the thing you don't have is a network. So I would encourage you to speak to as many relevant people as possible and use each one of them as a launch point to the next, to say, who else do you know that's interesting that would be worth me speaking to, rather than who do you know that might be looking, who do you know that would be a good person to speak to, and get to places where these people socialize, and, you know, live podcast recordings or, you know, social meetups. You can get in front of them and you know, start to build up a better understanding and a better network. What would you add to that?
Yeah, I would completely agree with that. Like, I wouldn't be successful or in this role today if it wasn't for my network. So there's a woman in payments called Kim DeJesus, who has incredible people around her that she's fully enveloped me in her community and her network, which is like Nicole and Yasmin and the wider team, who now we've been able to leverage to come and help us at Volt. And then we've been able to like, I think without having her, and even Grant introduced us to each other, and he was like, oh, can you meet Paul and help him out with this podcast and LinkedIn Live? And like Grant, I met when I was working at Checkout and he was working at a different company, and we've still stayed in contact like 5 years on. I think the network and the one person you meet can then introduce you to incredible people that are really invested in making you successful. So yeah, definitely social meetups. Like you said, there's always LinkedIn, podcast recordings. There's always something going on in payments. But also, I'm happy to talk to him if he wants to talk to someone. I'm happy to introduce. And yeah, I just think don't be shy to message people on LinkedIn or leverage that network or understand of. Also, payments is really big, right? What type of payments? What interests you about payments? What interests you? What role? Is it a sales role? Is it a partnerships role? I think there's many different things that you can go into. So trying to understand a little bit better why, and then you can be a bit more targeted with your outreach. But I'm also happy to chat with him if he wants to chat.
Excellent. Well, on that note, you're absolutely right. It was Grant that introduced us. So thank you to Grant for that. And it's been great chatting to you. I will absolutely take you up on that introduction to Dylan, because I know from other people I've introduced you before, one of them in particular said you've been a really excellent mentor, which I'm sure will come as no surprise to people who know you. So thank you for that. And thank you, everybody that's tuned in. And I hope you enjoyed it.
Perfect. Thanks, everyone.
Cheers.
Have a lovely Christmas. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you too. Take care. Bye.